Yeah, my name is Uche Atomubayade. I am a former World Bank economist. I've also been an assistant professor of economics at the University of Pittsburgh. I want to talk about networking. So I'm going to share my screen. I will share my screen and project a slide where I talk about a proprietary framework um, of networking. So my talk today is more of, think about it as a hot take in general. So when I do get invited to talk about things, I always then think about it in terms of what is my approach and how have I implemented or applied that in my work, whether it was my work as a researcher or in academia or just even in business. Yeah. So what is networking? When you think about networking in the traditional sense, it's this idea of connecting with people, especially in a professional setting, to either get to learn or to collaborate. And I think, again, this is a hot take. I do think that traditional networking or networking in the true sense of the word is dead in the sense that it's not necessarily something that gives the desired benefit that people want it to give. So I think that we need to think differently about how we network and how we show up in professional spaces. And so my talk is going to be around a six-stage framework that I call Grow Up. So again, traditional networking, I think is very performative. I think that in order for you to get the desired benefits, you need to grow up. So what do I need? What do I mean by grow up? Before I talk about that, I want to say that my stance is just based on the idea that I think that traditional networking is both overwhelming and underwhelming. So what does that mean? Overwhelming in the sense of think about some of the networking events that you've ever attended. For me, I find it very interesting because I remember being in academia, and it even still happens in other spaces as well, where when you attend networking events, it's always like these events where there are no seats for anyone. It's supposed to be you're standing and networking with people, and if you're lucky, there might be like some cocktail tables and things like that. And personally, in terms of personality, I consider myself as an introverted extrovert. So basically, when you meet me for the first time, you probably think, oh, she's very social, but not necessarily. I think that, yes, I do know how to work a room. However, those things really exhaust me. I find them very exhausting. So I always joke and say that for every day that I spend outside in presence of people, I need 3 working days to recover. And I mean that truly, just in terms of the amount of energy that it takes, but also because I would rather, I am, in terms of personality, would rather like do the work very quietly, as opposed to like working very loudly. Not that anyone is bad. It's just really about understanding yourself. So in that sense, that idea of like being thrown into a group of people and just like wanting to interact because you're trying to either get people to collaborate with you or work with you is overwhelming in that sense, but also underwhelming, because once you leave, if you don't follow up or you don't find people whose work are aligned with yours, it really doesn't go anywhere. So in that sense, is performative. And so because of that, I really truly believe that if you rethink how we network and how we show up, it brings better results. And so again, I think that in order to rethink that, we sort of have to think about what's really wrong with traditional networking. Like I said, just too many business cards, too few connections. Like you're trying to like exchange contacts with people, but how many of them are you really building real connections with? And then more often than not, you find yourself having to make too much small talk. Again, small talks are not bad. Like you have to like think about it as icebreakers, right? If you're trying to command a room, you typically would like think about, oh, how to break the ice or like what are things that you say to get people to warm up to you. But then again, if you don't follow up after that, it just doesn't go anywhere. So there's like too much talk, too little follow up. And then if you're doing this on social media, which LinkedIn is like the place for people to connect professionally on social media, there's like you're sending so many LinkedIn requests or connecting with people, but the relationships don't always feel very real. Because of that, what do we, what actually works and what do we need to do in order to move away from that traditional networking that doesn't really serve us the way it's supposed to? I think the first thing is to understand that real opportunities come when you become the kind of person that is worth knowing. So a lot of times people are looking for opportunities, but I think the best opportunities are the one that you create for yourself. And then that happens while you're doing the real work. So I often say real networking is a byproduct of real work. If you let your work lead, people will usually find your work before they find you. So relationships in general that build on values and not vanity metrics are the ones that actually last. So it's not really about the number of people that you talk to or the number of people that shows up. It's like the number of people you have a real connection with and the number of people, the number of connections that actually lead to something meaningful for you professionally. So grow up is my six principles framework for building real relationships through real work. So what does it mean to grow up? Well, obviously is an acronym. And I am very notorious for coming up with acronyms that not only vibe with the topic, but also are very meaningful. So I'm going to go through them very quickly and then I'll talk on each one, and sort of like just expand on it some more. So G is grieve freely, R is reach across, O is own your work, W is work quietly but consistently, and U is to understand value alignment, and P prepare before you're ready. So let's go through the first one. What does it mean to give freely? It's not that I'm saying, so let me be very clear here. It's not that I'm saying that you shouldn't network, really. I'm saying that you need to rethink the way that you network. So to give freely means that do not try to withdraw from a bucket that you haven't contributed to. And when most people try to network, that's what they do. You need to be able to put yourself in a position where you're giving before asking. Don't wait to be asked to be a contributor. So think about it. It's different when you come to someone and say, "Hey, I've seen your work. I have something of value that I think could be useful to your work." That ask is different than, "Oh, I saw your work and I need XYZ from you." So a lot of times people are more likely to warm up to you when you're offering them something than when you're asking them for a favor. So always put yourself in a position where you're offering insight and support or visibility without needing something in return. So in general, it's not that you shouldn't ask, but form the habit of giving first. And sometimes in professional settings, this doesn't come naturally. It has to be through intentional work. And it's not that you're giving people something only because you're, strategizing on how to come back and get it. Like truly, truly give first, give often, and give without keeping track of what you're giving. And what that means professionally is contribute. If you join a group or like you're trying to get something from a group, make sure that you are joining with the mindset of being a contributor. So this is really just a mindset shift. Then this is my favorite one. A lot of times when people are thinking about how to network and who to reach out to, it's more like they're thinking about someone who's already ahead. Again, reaching out to someone you think is ahead of you professionally is great. However, most times we overlook people that are on the same level with us. Like that's your coworker, the one who got hired with you, the classmate that you have, the friend that you have. These are people who are your future co-authors. They are your future co-founders, but you're overlooking them because you're looking up to the guy who has already built his network. And that guy does not necessarily want to like work with you, at least not at the time T, except of course you have something to offer. So we often try to build relationships upward when we should tighten the relationship across. Your peers are your ecosystem, and I cannot even stress this enough. Grow with them, and you would find that doors will begin to open organically just because you're not forcing things. And so most times, your strongest connections, I would even argue that, yeah, more than most times, like almost all the time, your strongest connections are with people that are on the same level with you because these people are people that you can grow together, you can feel together, you can learn together. It's not like someone who is ahead that you're always reaching out to, that you're chasing. And quite frankly, in those instances, sometimes when we're trying to network upward, what we are actually seeking is mentorship, not necessarily network. And you have to understand that there's a difference. Seeking mentors are not wrong, but when you're seeking someone who is above you, either someone's work who you admire, you usually are seeking some type of mentorship. The problem with that framework is typically for mentorship to work, the person whom you're seeking mentorship from has to understand that you're seeking mentorship from them and they have to be willing to mentor you. Most times, that's really not what how it works out because like you're reaching out and you're like, oh, I'm trying to reach out to this person either because I want to get something from them and they're just not ready because again, time is limited. Most folks don't have time. And also being someone's mentor means a huge investment. I was reading a book recently and the author of that book, I don't remember what the name was talking about how a mentor has to be invested in you and has to believe in you enough to want to help you succeed. So it's really an action, like somebody needs to be taking that action, and people usually may not be as invested. Like they might like give you like something that is one off, like help you that one time, but not necessarily follow you across your life or across the ecosystem. So, and that's why it breaks down because if the person doesn't really understand what you're wanting them to offer, then you won't get the kind of results that you think you want to get. Then the other thing, which is also equally important, is to own your work. For most people, when you're reaching out professionally, where you're like reaching out to somebody, say you want to work with them or you, I don't know, want to like understand their work or even be their friend, there is really no clarity. If I asked you, what do you do? If you're not able to coherently describe what you do in just a few sentences, it means that even you don't know your work. So you have to be known for something solid. And usually your best pitch is the work that you've already done consistently because that's what's already out there. So build something worth discovering. And the other thing that people often overlook, that is part of networking that really works, is you have to work quietly and you have to work consistently. And I know that like in this present age, it's 2025, the advent of social media where people are thinking that everything happens so quickly. The truth is that it doesn't. Overnight success, in case you didn't know this, overnight success actually takes at least 10 years. And a lot of times when people are like, oh, this person just like sprung up, they just sprung up overnight. Yeah, it's usually over many nights. So don't get lost trying to be visible. Let people find you doing something valuable. So this means that you have to show up consistently. And every day when you show up consistently, it's not always going to be easy every day. And you're not going to feel like doing it every day. So it means that there are some days where your work doesn't feel like your work, but you show up regardless, irrespective of what's going on with you, because consistently builds reputation faster than clout. Anything that you do consistently, and here's the catch. I've met a few people across my life that would look and be like, oh, you're so smart. And while I appreciate that compliment, which is great, it's not that I don't believe I'm smart. I do, in fact, believe that I'm very smart. However, success is not built around being very smart, it's built on consistency. You are better off not being very smart, but being very consistent. You would do much more better than someone who is smart but only shows up once in a while. So the things that consistently would help you achieve over time, it's not something that happens very quickly, but over time, anything that you consistently do, you get better at. And while it might not seem very obvious, it's part of how you network because if you show up and continue to be good at what you're doing, your work would go before you and speak for you. And after a while, people will just know you or know your work, actually know your work. And I say that differently because I do think there's a difference that people know your work, and not everybody likes to keep a public profile or a high profile. But there are some people whose work in some certain fields, you just know if you're in that field. And then just to be fully transparent, just because you've given freely, well, reached across with people on your level, you own your work and you've worked consistently, does not always mean that every door that is openable would open. And that's the reason why you have to understand value alignment and then focus your energy on chasing things that are actually aligned to you. Because everybody that you're chasing is looking for something. If you're building in alignment with their mission, they will find you. My point is, when your work aligns with what somebody else is doing, they will find you. And then when they find you, it feels effortless and it feels like an opportunity that has been waiting for you just because of that alignment. And then obviously, I guess it goes without saying, prepare before you're ready. And this one, I used to be guilty of this in the early days where of course when you're chasing opportunities, you find out about something. Let's say there is a grant, there is a conference that is not aligned with your work at all. Like I said, like it's just like me doing something on conflict, but then there's a grant on business development that popped up. I know that's not my work. I know that's not my area. And then suddenly, last minute, I'm scrambling and trying to like write a proposal to submit for that conference that is not aligned. While that might make sense, because you're like, well, I'm chasing all of these opportunities and I want them to come. It might make sense, but in the long run, it doesn't necessarily work because what would in fact be perfect is to continue what you're doing and only find opportunities that are aligned with what you're doing so that when those opportunities come, you would already have a long track of work in that area. So this is what I call preparing before you're ready, because it's not that you are responding, like you're not being reactive to opportunities, you are being proactive to them because they would match you and meet you where you are. So one of the key ways to do this is to build habits, skill sets, and create value before opportunity knocks. Be the person that your future self would thank. And so what that means is if there's something that you're looking up to, like I said, remember I had said overnight success really actually takes 10 years or maybe 5 to 10 years. You have to understand how the cycle of your life works. For me, it's typically 5 to 10 years. And so what that means is I always say that everything that looks like is working right now is probably a function of work that I did 5 years ago. This means that the kind of person I want to be in the next 5 years is the kind of person I'm working towards today. So because again, there isn't anybody that tells you there is like a, well, I guess get rich scheme or get successful quickly scheme. It's not being completely honest because a lot of things that are good take time and they take work. And so you typically have to work towards something. And over time, it feels like it's easy. But the truth is, you have to work towards it and allow things time to take off. Um, so I want to share some grounded truths about connection. That these are just like think about them as like random things that I think are super helpful. Most barriers are internal, not external. What do I mean by that? A lot of times we are the ones that create scenarios of why things wouldn't work in our head as opposed to why they would work. So a lot of times when people are talking about all of their things that are going to stand in their way, it's stuff that they make up. Simple example, at least that I've learned in the past year or two about business. A lot of times people would be like, oh, I want to do this, or I have this idea that I want to execute on. And then I ask them, so why are you not moving on it? And they start saying things on, oh, I don't think I have this. And I'm like, you are making all of those stuff up because a lot of times you don't even know the problems that you have. And I'm not saying you wouldn't have problems, you would, because that is it's just the way life is. If you embark on something, anything meaningful at all, there will be challenges. But most of the challenges that people encounter are challenges that they make up themselves, not real life challenges. Because what will typically happen in real life is, as human beings, we are built to adapt. And if you have challenges, we oftentimes negotiate those challenges in real time. And most of the challenges that are real are challenges that also have solutions. So the word means prepared people. And so if you have something that you want to be or a version of yourself that you want to see, then you have to really work towards it and don't make up problems before you have them. The next thing is the things that you think are out of reach are things that you haven't really tried. So again, what do you feel is most out of reach and what do you feel is standing in your way to be who you want to be? The problem is that we are always looking up to people to help us take the next step because we think that if we have the real connections or meet the right people, that is often not true. Do you need people? Absolutely, yes. Do you need people every time to move forward? I argue no. I think that the most important person that you need is yourself. And most times, the people that we are looking for is just a version of ourselves that we're yet to become. So walk towards it because opportunities only go to people who stay ready. So you have to be ready for the opportunities that you want. Now, this is one of my favorite things. The people that you admire aren't superhuman. They are just walking through their own struggles. So you have to build with intention and release with trust. Now, again, I cannot say this enough. When we network, we look forward to people. We're looking up to people because we think that those people have something or they are like something that we want. And then we think that if we connect with them, we will be able to connect with that. And when in reality, you are just looking up to a version of yourself that you think is impossible. And I'll tell you this for free because now people do that to me where people want to reach out to you because they think that you have the secret sauce to something. And then you'll be very disappointed when you then find that I'm just a regular human being. I don't have any secret sauce. I just like walk into a room and I don't believe in impossibilities, which means that do I think that everything would open up or I have all the opportunities that I want? Absolutely not. But I also don't talk myself out of opportunities without having to try them first. And I think that's where most people miss it. You have to try something and understand why it's not going to work for you, as opposed to assuming that it wouldn't work. There isn't anybody that is a superhuman. Even the best people, the people that we think have the most opportunities also have their fears and their struggles. People are struggling with something at any given time. And so don't make up situations in your head and think that there are people who have things and or who are where you want to be and that they're better than you because in reality, nobody's really better. Growing up for me wasn't just personal, it was strategic. And I mean like the grew up framework, the six principles frameworks that I've talked about. Just thinking about giving freely and reaching across and all of that step building up to getting ready before opportunities knock gave me the discipline to do the work and gave me the clarity to become a brand. And I talk about a brand as being someone worth knowing, not just someone that people notice. So consistency that I've talked about now a lot of times opens more doors than charisma ever would. You can show up and people like you for who you are because you're funny or things like that, but people will always just remember you for the work that you've done. Relationships deepened when I led with values, not a request. So I gave the example of how I got my first opportunity at the World Bank. I interviewed at network, I'd done everything right. But it really just came down to somebody finding something that I did that really aligned with what she was looking for at that point in time, and I didn't even have to interview. Visibility matters at that point, like when you're working so hard because you want people to know you. And a lot of people do that. Like, let's say, again, in this world of social media, you're on LinkedIn, you're like very visible, people know you, but what do they know you for? And I always say when people are really big on building their network because they want people to know them, like, what are you trying to be visible about? Like, okay, now we know you, then what? So if there's nothing real behind that visibility, it becomes more of a cost than it is a blessing. So here's the question you should always ask yourself. Are you leading with value? If you haven't built anything yet, what are you really showcasing? And if you're asking people for something or you're asking them for a connection, you want to work with them or you want to like get aligned with them, is your ask rooted in alignment or in approval seeking? Like, are you trying to just be in that circle and in that space because everyone you know is been in that space, or because you think that that's the next step for you? Or are you wanting to be in that space because it aligns with what you're building? My take from this is, do not try to market a brand that you're not building. And when I'm talking about a brand, really here, I'm talking about yourself, because I think about people as a brand, and you should think about yourself as a brand too. So, in order to become a brand, how do you do that? You have to build credibility through consistency, root yourself in purpose, articulate your value very clearly, and nurture meaningful relationships. Collaboration over cloud wins all of the time. And then finally, demonstrate growth in everything that you do. Let your evolution speak louder than your exposure. So, which means that it's really about the work. Exposure will come at a time when, if exposure comes at a time that you've already done the work, then people don't just know you, they know you in connection to something. And those are the kind of things that actually build relationships that last. Um, Finally, I've talked about this briefly. When you're trying to reach out and connect and collaborate with people, make sure that you're clear on what's happening. Are you asking for sponsorship or for mentorship? Neither is bad, but clarity is very important. If you're asking for mentorship, which in some instances could be great, you're looking up to someone and you really think that being mentored by the person would be valuable. It just has to be a two-way street. Remember, like mentorship is a two-way street. Sponsorship or mentorship isn't bad, but be honest and be very clear what you're asking. If you're only benefiting and not bringing value, then really that's sponsorship, because that's how sponsorship or mentorship works. It's one way, the other person is trying to invest in you. But what you shouldn't do is to seek sponsorship disguised or mentorship disguised as networking, because that's where disappointments pile up. Mutuality builds trust and desperation breaks it. So a lot of times when people are like reaching out, there's just like a lot of desperate moves. Like you're reaching out to someone, it's not quite aligned, they're not like necessarily responding to you, and every time the tone of either your messaging or your or the way that you're reaching out gets more and more desperate. Before you reach out, always be clear with what you're offering, and most times things work out when you're trying to give before you are asking for a favor. um I want to leave you with this: start small, start strong. It doesn't have to be something that is big or something that is super innovative where it changes the world. Like everybody wants to change the world, but the truth is that in order to change the world, you have to start by changing the things around you. Prepare before you perform, and again, reach across before you reach up. Start in that small circle, your group of friends, your colleagues at work, your classmates, people that are in those inner circles. And always, always, always give before you ask. Do not draw from something that you haven't contributed to. And most times when you're building, when you're in that stage where you're putting in the work, you're working and you're like trying to like level up, it always feels like you're behind, but you're not. You're building. So remember, I said earlier that everything comes in phases, right? And there is really nothing like overnight success. Overnight success often takes at least 5 to 10 years. Be who you're looking up to and be the person that your younger self was waiting for. So essentially, when you're looking up to somebody or you're looking up to someone who you think is far, far above you, what you're really looking up to is a future version of yourself. And the only way to become a future version of yourself is to start building that future version now. Well, thank you very much. Like I said, I think about networking in terms of like what we have to give as opposed to what we are receiving. So it's not that you shouldn't try to be connections with people, but let's be very intentional about what that means. And usually the value that we have is really in what we are trying to give as opposed to what we're trying to receive.